You used to call me on my. You used to. Yeah. You used to call me on my cell phone. Late night when you need my love. Call me on my cell phone. Late night when you need my love. And I know when that hotline blink, that can only mean one thing. I know when that hotline blink, that can only mean one thing. Ever since I left the city, you got a reputation for yourself now. Everybody knows and I feel left out. Girl, you got me down, you got me stressed out. Cause ever since I left the city, you started wearing less and going out more. Glasses of champagne out on the dance floor. Hanging with some girls I never seen before.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, am I right in this moment listening to the evolution of Mike Farwell? Like, why would that classic rockhead stuck in the 1970s play Drake to start the show on this Tuesday morning? 8th of July, 2025. Well, don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, evolution, that's a big word. Lots of syllables in there. Not the easiest word to spell. Like, tell me how Tion becomes shun. What is with this English language anyway? No, I'm not that evolved. But I can play a track from the Canadian rap. I won't call him an icon. Too soon for that. Anyway, it's a notable day, this day in music history, because it was on this day just 9 years ago in 2016 that Drake was at number one on the U.S. chart with his fourth studio album, the album called Views, the song you just heard, Hotline Bling. And I was this many years old when I put those two words together in a sentence on the radio. Hotline Bling was the first track released from the album Views. Interestingly, yesterday when we started the show with Born in the USA from Springsteen, it led to an impromptu trivia game that we played. I could do the same thing. I could today, because what we had yesterday with Born in the USA was an album that featured 7 top 10 singles from one album. And only 2 others, along with Born in the USA, were able to achieve that. You correctly guessed both Michael Jackson's Thriller and Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. The Jackson family showing well in top 10 singles from one album. Well, with the album Views, Drake joined only 3 others as artists in the 2010s to have an album remain at number one on the Billboard 200 for 6 consecutive weeks. I'm not going to make you guess today. I mean, if you're really thinking quickly, you might know that the other 3, along with Drake, to have a number one album for 6 consecutive weeks, Adele, Michael Bublé, and this one I'm sure you would have guessed, Taylor Swift. Those 4, Swift, Bublé, Adele, and Drake, have a number one album in the 2010s decade to stay at number one for 6 consecutive weeks. I was thinking back on that beginning of the show yesterday. We had some fun with the impromptu, unplanned trivia. But you know what we didn't get into, other than the 7 singles from Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, which were the songs that each of those artists put into the top 10 from one single album. Michael Jackson was first to do it with the 1982 album Thriller. The 7 top 10 singles, The Girl Is Mine, that was the duet with Paul McCartney. Billie Jean, Beat It, Wanna Be Startin' Something, Human Nature, PYT, Pretty Young Thing, and the title track, Thriller. Then along came Springsteen in 84. He equaled that feat with 7 top 10s, including the title track that we played yesterday, Born in the USA. Also, Dancing in the Dark, Cover Me, I'm on Fire, Glory Days, I'm Going Down, and My Hometown. And then in 1989, Janet Jackson with her Rhythm Nation album, another 7 top 10 singles from just the one album with Miss You Much, Rhythm Nation, Escapade, All Right, Come Back to Me, Black Cat, and Love Will Never Do Without You. They just don't make it like they used to, music anymore. 3 albums from the 1980s, all with 7 top 10 singles. Just ahead of your Farwell Show 5 for this Tuesday morning, I wanted to give a shout out to the guy who gave a shout out to us last night. While we were out, me and my beloved and Rosie the pandemic pup were out for a walk, and I could have sworn I heard somebody yell, Farwell! And I said to my beloved, did I just hear because you know me, right? Like, my ego is so big. My head is so fat. I can barely fit through the studio door every day. So everywhere I go, I think people are calling my name. Anyway, I said to my beloved, I said, did somebody just shout Farwell? And so I turns around, and there you were, arm out the window with a big wave. I never saw your face, but I just wanted you to know that I appreciate that. Gosh darn it. If I'm just out there walking along the street with my beloved and my pandemic pup, or I'm just walking along the street myself and you want to just shout, like, we should start this as a thing, right? Every time you see me on the street, I want you to yell out your window, Farwell! And if you want to add you suck, you can do that. I mean, I understand. Feedback is important. I'm not perfect, but I just wanted to let you know. I really appreciated that. Truly, I did. I think it's great. I love how we all get along around here. All right, let's get to that Farwell Show 5 for this Tuesday morning. Number 1, a 38-year-old man from Kitchener arrested in connection to a weekend stabbing. Joshua Finnemore has been charged with attempted murder after the stabbing early Sunday afternoon in the Victoria and Frederick area. Police believe the two men knew each other. Chief Mark Crowell and Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, head of traffic services, join us on the show this morning at 11 for our monthly Ask the Chief segment. Number 2, a bomb scare in downtown Kitchener. Turns out to have been a fake call, but regional police were taking no chances. Officers came out to a government building at Duke and Frederick Streets around noon yesterday. Police searched the entire building, found nothing suspicious. Number 3, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Hamilton police called to a home in Flamborough early Sunday morning after a shooting. The home on Highway 6 is the same place a man was fatally shot last year. Now, in this Sunday's case, the victim was taken to hospital with injuries, but is expected to survive. That Flamborough property has been known by neighbors as, quote, Party Villa. Number 4, members of Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet will reportedly have to find a way to slash their budgets by tens of billions of dollars over the next 3 years. That's according to an internal letter sent to cabinet members by Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, obtained by the Globe and Mail. Globe reports that budgets will have to be slashed by 7.5% for the 26-27 fiscal year, which starts next April. That will be followed by a 10% cut in the 27-28 year and a 15% cut the year after. The order is reportedly meant to support increased defense spending by the federal government. And number 5, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Reap Green Solutions expanding its community canopy free tree planting program to the Greenway Chaplin neighborhood in Cambridge. The program partners with municipalities to enable property owners to increase tree canopy in equity-deserving areas. And it includes on-site consultation in your yard with an arborist, a native tree with warranty, mulch and staking, if necessary, full-service delivery, planting and a care guide, and a follow-up visit to check on tree health and correctively prune. You can visit reapgreen.ca to apply for your tree. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Tuesday morning. We'll take a break. Your morning wake-up call is on the way. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I'm not sure the wake-up call is mine today or the federal bureaucracies. given that letter obtained by the Globe and Mail documenting the tens of billions of dollars in budget cuts that Prime Minister Mark Carney is reportedly demanding over the next several years. Quite frankly, I care not if this is to help the nation increase its defense spending. I just care that this is being done. And it is one of the things I was hopeful of when a former banker became our prime minister. I think there is fat to be trimmed within our federal bureaucracy. Remember the roughly 40% increase in the number of employees during the last prime minister's term. To say or suggest that the federal government and the number of civil servants or bureaucrats working for it has become bloated, I think would be an understatement. I am exceedingly confident that these budget savings can be found. I'm quite interested in watching this moving forward. I've heard some arguments that say it's easier said than done, and I get that. But I think Prime Minister Carney, has put the right people in place to get the difficult work done. And it will be very interesting to see where this goes. Remember also, in saying that, Ontario Premier Doug Ford came into office about 8 years ago now, 8 years ago, and said the same thing. We're going to find efficiencies. We're going to go through every department line by line. And I believe the number then was 4% that was to be found. I'm not certain. In fact, I'm fairly confident that number was never realized provincially. So we'll see what happens federally. But I, for one, am encouraged by the approach. Let's get to the phones, your morning wake-up call, and Paul is here today. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm still vertical.
Good man.
Okay, it'll be very easy for the federal government to achieve this percentage cut in each department. All they have to do is stop hiring consultants to do the work that they're supposed to be doing themselves.
You know what, Paul? That's another great point. With all of those additions to the civil service with the last prime minister, we also had an increase in consulting. I don't understand how that worked.
Yeah, now here's the problem. The increase in military spending is going to also be for consultants. They're going to hire a consultant to decide which is the best toilet seat to install in the latrines.
Now, come on. That's not really happening. You're joking now, right?
No, seriously. That's what they're going to do. We all know that military spending, military equipment is disposable. That's the whole idea of it. It's all disposable. So, we get a consultant to pay him millions and millions of dollars, as long as he's a good liberal supporter. You pay this consultant millions and millions of dollars to decide whether to use a white toilet seat or an off-white toilet seat.
Paul, you're being facetious now.
No, I'm not. This is what the government does. They save money in one area so that they can transfer it to somebody who supports, why?
So wait, are you telling me then that you are opposed to the increase in defense spending?
I'm not opposed to the increase in defense spending, but I am opposed to the increase in consultants because they have to have.
What if they don't hire a consultant?
They hired all these people in the past government in order to do certain jobs.
Yes.
And all these people, their whole job is to go out and find the best liberal consultant to pay to do their work. All
right. I understand the frustration and the point that you're making, but I don't think this is that. And I just want to be clear on that. I am quite frankly, I almost jumped for joy. And a tubby old guy like me doesn't jump a whole lot these days, okay? When I read the front page of my morning paper on news that the Globe is reporting this letter that Mark Carney has sent and asking for these tens of billions of dollars in budget reductions, I almost leapt for, if I could leap for joy, I would have. Now the question is, can he or can the bureaucracy deliver? I, for one, am watching with interest. There are no consultants attached to the defense spending that I'm aware of yet. Certainly not to determine which color the latrine seat should be. This is the Mike Farwell Show, where you never know what you're going to get. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Few minutes away from your 9:30 update in the 570 News Center. Let's get back to the phones. I love my 9 a.m.ers. George, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Excellent, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm very excited. My daughter was telling me she has 1 year left university. Get this, Mike. She's doing 1 year left public policy. She was telling me she can be a consultant for the federal government under the NATO umbrella and start setting some public policies regarding securities and armed forces within Canada. If that happens, Mike, I am retiring.
Bravo, George. Hey, listen, good on you for raising a smart kid.
He's a smart kid, and she's that kind of person. She could set some great policies.
Love to hear it. Well done. Congratulations, sir. Great to hear from you, George. George is going to retire on his daughter's earnings from the federal government as a consultant. What I think I might do is approach the regional government and offer my services in speed camera technology. I got an email this morning from Janet to Mike at 570news.com. I was the lucky recipient, Janet writes, of a speeding ticket from a school zone in St. Clements. Yup, I was warned. My husband was in the car with me and said, it's only 40 here. Whoops, too late. I was going 51 in a 40 zone. Can I interrupt the email for a minute here? These are not the speeders you're looking for. Janet is not the maniac you're trying to get off the roads. 51 in a 40. You want the maniacs? McQueen Shaver Boulevard, please. Franklin Boulevard, please. Highway 401, please. Janet is not the maniac you're looking for. Excuse that editorial. Back to the email. My error, Janet writes, I know. And I knew I'd be getting a bill in the mail. And I was okay with that. I get it. But why is there over $23 in fees on a $55 ticket? And if this happens again, will I have to pay those fees again? Oh, yes, Janet. Oh, yes, you will. The fees, the victim surcharges, this is all part of the scheme. It's like a pyramid scheme. Everybody gets paid from your speeding ticket, right? The camera operator, the processing center, the attorney general provincially, that's where the victim surcharge goes to. It's all wrapped up into one ticket coming out of your pocket. But go ahead and tell me again how this is not a cash grab. Come on with your coming on. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers. It's not just because my insurance is up for renewal. It is, though, later this summer. I also happened to be talking with a good buddy of mine over lunch the other day, and he expressed a similar frustration with his policy renewal and the subsequent increases therein. And so I think that makes this a pretty timely conversation. The conversation is begun by the group Investors for Paris Compliance, and they have issued a public complaint in the form of an open letter to Ontario's insurance regulator. Kira Taylor is a member of Investors for Paris Compliance and joins me to talk about it. Kira, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
I'm also doing well.
Glad to hear that. Just before we get into the complaint to the insurance regulator, who are Investors for Paris Compliance?
Yeah, we are a shareholder advocacy organization that work to try and hold Canadian financial institutions accountable to their net zero commitments and also make sure that they're managing climate risk properly.
So you have filed a complaint with the Financial Services Regulatory Authority over soaring home insurance costs. Why?
Because there's no end in sight and there's currently no transparency. The home insurance system is under stress, and we really haven't seen the regulators step up to look into it, so we asked them to. Our complaint hits on three different things: system stability and resilience, a lack of transparency, and also conflict of interest. Climate change is causing extreme weather, and climate change is here to stay. So we know these open-ended rate hikes are also here to stay.
Where does a conflict of interest come into play here?
So the conflict of interest is while insurers continue to profit off of their investments and underwriting fossil fuels, which is the driver of climate change, they also continue to profit off of increased climate damages, because as of right now, they're just passing on the cost to consumers and taxpayers when disaster strikes from extreme weather. So that's either via premium increases, as you mentioned, or disaster bailout via government funding. So they're really profiting off of both sides right now.
As I mentioned, yes, I did just get my renewal forms. I went through them fairly carefully because I like to know where my nickels and dimes are being spent. What greater transparency do you believe that the insurance industry needs to offer consumers?
Mm-hmm. So currently for auto insurance, the regulator provides a public registry of rate hikes and rationales for those rate hikes. The regulator also does their own analysis of the sector and what's going on and why rates might be going up. And there's just no similar public data accessible on home insurance rate hikes and their justification. So that's our kind of minimum ask. Well, I guess our minimum ask is for the regulator really to kind of just get off the couch and conduct an investigation into the future stability of the home insurance system. But the first transparency that we would want is for insurers to publicly disclose the rate hikes and the rationale, but then also climate risk data. So most people who are in a high-risk flood area don't actually know that they live in a high-risk flood area. So we want insurers to also disclose that climate risk data so people know what the risks are and they know whether their insurance is probably going to go up in the next few years, whether they'll be able to sell their house and retirement plan. And then we're also asking for transparency on insurers' net zero activities. So consumers have a right to know whether their insurer is contributing to the cause that's making their bill go up. So this would begin to build an accessible base of knowledge where none now exists.
When you talk, Kira, about the future stability or sustainability of the insurance industry, are you looking at that from the consumer's perspective, whereby you're not sure the consistently increasing premiums are sustainable for consumers?
Yeah, so currently there's no analysis about Ontarians' ability to pay for ongoing open-ended hikes. We're already seeing people get priced out of being able to pay for their insurance. And that is a real issue. If you can't get insurance, then you can't have a mortgage. And if you're defaulting on your insurance payments, you're likely also defaulting on a lot of other payments. Right now, we're seeing that people are being priced out of flood insurance specifically. It's quite expensive. It can be up to $10,000 or $15,000. Add to that, it's 1.5 million homes in Canada that are in a high flood risk area. And I think it's 94% of those homes are uninsured. So it's a lot of people facing this issue, and we just haven't seen really any public discourse on it. So first and foremost, we're trying to make sure people have the information that they need to live safely in a increasingly kind of dangerous Canada.
I know the letter and the call to the regulator was only issued a week or so ago. Any traction yet? Any response from the FSRA?
We haven't got any response other than them saying that they've received it and are going to give us a response.
Do you have any next steps planned?
Wait for a response is the first next step. But if we don't hear anything back from FSRA, then some escalation is due, but we haven't fully planned that out yet.
What motivated you to take such a public position like this?
Yeah, so as I kind of alluded to with describing what Investors for Paris compliance does, we mostly do corporate engagement. So we started with engaging one-on-one with insurers, talking to them about climate risk, talking to them about net zero. But as we were doing this research and this engagement, we recognized that there was this really big systemic risk that just wasn't being discussed in either the insurance sector or just the financial system discussions more broadly. And we went about trying to talk to some regulators directly, some government officials directly, insurers directly, but we just didn't see the progress or urgency that we know needs to match this issue. So we took it upon ourselves to take a public position and make this complaint also public so that we can at least have some centralized data about rate hikes and shrinking coverage and all the things in the letter so that people can read it and also get somewhat of an idea of what's going on. But it was really a product of having those direct engagement conversations with insurers and doing this research and seeing that there wasn't enough happening.
Kira, I really appreciate the conversation this morning. Thank you very much for joining the show.
Thanks, Mike.
Kira Taylor is a senior policy analyst with Investors for Paris Compliance. Puts a nice bow on it there at the end of the conversation. Premiums up 84%. This is on home insurance over the last decade, while coverage shrinks, and there's been no public analysis of whether Ontarians can keep paying these increasing rates. And so Investors for Paris Compliance have filed a complaint with Ontario's insurance regulator, FSRA, or the Financial Services Regulatory Authority. I know that in these here parts, and I can't help but think of this at least somewhat in relation to what we're seeing in Texas, of course, with those devastating and tragic floods. We, in this region, have several areas that are flood prone. So perhaps it hits closer to home, no pun intended for you, than me in my, I think, flood safe or flood safer neighborhood in Kitchener, for example. But there's no question that this is an increasing concern for a number of Canadians. And when you think about those premiums, if it's one thing you can almost be sure of, it's that the premiums go up year after year after year, whether you make a claim or not, because you know that the premiums you pay are helping to offset the claims paid out by people in other parts of the province, other parts of the country who are in higher flood and or fire risk areas. What's your take on the complaint issued by Investors for Paris Compliance? Do they have a case here with Ontario's insurance regulator that costs are too high and coverage too low? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
We recognized that there was this really big systemic risk that just wasn't being discussed in either the insurance sector or just financial system discussions more broadly. And we went about trying to talk to some regulators directly, insurers directly, but we just didn't see the progress or urgency that we know needs to match this issue.
Kira Taylor is a senior policy analyst with Investors for Paris Compliance. That group has filed a complaint with the Financial Services Regulatory Authority over soaring home insurance costs, which they say are driven by climate changes. Premiums up 84% over the past decade. Coverage has been shrinking, and there's been no public analysis of whether Ontarians can keep paying. Your thoughts on what you heard? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Mike from Point Clark. This is a very timely topic for me. Like most people, I just grinned and bear it and wrote the check each year. And now that I'm retired, this year, I shopped around. was with the insurance company in various forms for over 40 years, right? And I just swallowed the increase. Now, Mike, I'm going to give you an example of my savings that I found. One of the things that insurance companies are doing right now, and several neighbors and stuff like that, we have been deemed to have a high theft vehicle. So for one of my vehicles, because it was deemed high theft, they wanted $3,300 a year. I did some shopping around, and I met a nice insurance agent in Kincardine. I'm not going to give him a plug or anything, but Mike, the difference was $1,700.
Wow, that's significant.
Because basically, I live in an area with 500 or 600 full-time residents. I have an anti-theft device on my thing, so $1,700 difference. I have a second vehicle, Mike, an old Jeep. It has nearly $400,000 on it. These guys were charging me like $1,300 a year. I got it for $700 a year because of the high mileage. The guy said, your car's not even worth like $3,000-$4,000, right? Well, so why are you paying all this, right? So I would say you need to shop around. Now, on the homeowner insurance, again, I've been paying this company that I've been dealing with for over 40 years. Mike, I have 2 properties, and I saved $500 just by, shopping around a bit.
Yeah.
So I think it's not only climate change. I think it's vehicle theft. I think it's where you live, a whole bunch of things here. But I think some of these costs are unjustified. Like my one neighbor has a Dodge Ram 1500. They wanted $4,000 a year insurance from it. And we switched to this new person. And if you have an alarm system, well, mine came with an alarm system. That's a heck of a lot of difference, Mike, because
I hear you.
That's $2,200. So I just want to say,
shop around.
It's not climate change. Shop around.
I got you. Appreciate it. I want to get to some other callers, but I'm in the same boat where you just kind of swallow it and pay the increase every year. And as I said, my renewals just came in. I like to go through things as carefully as I can. And when I spoke to my broker, she says, we're quite pleased that it's only a 1% increase, which is lower than my buddy who said his went up 30%. So there you go. Dave, good morning.
Good morning. Timely subject as everybody else. My insurance is coming up in 2 months' time, but already I have planned prior to today that I am going to drop my house insurance. And
you're going to drop as in cancel or just lower your coverage?
Oh, cancel it.
You're going to cancel house insurance?
Yeah. But I give you good news and bad news.
Okay.
Fine. Good news is I live in a condo, so I have condo insurance. The bad news is my condo insurance, of course, goes way up. And I always pay twice on insurance. But I'm going to outright drop my house insurance, which is combined with my vehicle insurance, because it's just not worth it. It pays the difference in my house insurance, private house insurance, is it covers the betterments, what they call the betterments or improvements of your home. And I feel, okay, I'll swallow it. I'll just not pay the house insurance anymore. And if my house burns down, they rebuild it to its original built status. And then I'll turn around and sell at a good profit and move somewhere else. And that's what I'm going to do, Mike.
All right, Dave. Thanks for letting us in on that. I hope that's okay. I know that, when I was renting, you could insure just the contents, for example. But when it comes to actual home insurance, and, maybe Dave doesn't have a mortgage anymore, but you can't have the mortgage without the insurance. So that gets a little bit tricky. I just hope you're okay there, Dave. Let's squeeze in one more. Jim Bagg, my buddy, how are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing okay, thanks.
Good man.
I'm on vacation today, so I thought I could actually call you. I'll keep this short and sweet. How many insurance companies have gone bankrupt lately?
Zero, Jim. Zero.
Exactly. These insurance companies are making money hand over fist, and they're saying your premium's going up because of climate change. Give me a break. They're making money for their shareholders, and that. And I don't buy the whole climate change thing.
All right, Jim, appreciate the call. I understand the frustration for sure. It's like playing against a casino. House always wins. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is back. What the cluck, Cambridge? The backyard chicken conversation is back again. A new petition has begun circulating in an effort to get the city of Cambridge to change course on backyard chickens. You know how they do it in Kitchener. Have whatever you want. But in Cambridge, they say no. Should that policy change? Let's talk about it on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it's an issue that continues to come up from time to time. And here we are again in Cambridge, where an online petition has begun to circulate, advocating for the city to change its policy around backyard chickens. Cambridge is an outlier in this regard. Both Kitchener and Waterloo allow up to 4 backyard chickens. Heck, in Kitchener, they've even got the personal support pig allowed in a backyard. But Cambridge has stood firm against allowing backyard chickens, at least so far. And according to Ward 4 councillor in Cambridge, Ross Earnshaw, this has been studied extensively by council just a few years ago, and there has been no material change in circumstances that would, in his opinion, justify revisiting the topic now. But don't tell that to our next guest. Madison Turner is the creator of the petition appealing for backyard chickens in Cambridge and joins us to talk about it. Madison, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm good, thanks. What a great way to start the day. Thanks for having me on air with you.
I'm very happy to do so because I personally find this topic fascinating. I'll be honest with you, Madison, I'm not a backyard chicken guy myself, but I am the kind of guy that thinks, hey, it's your place, and within reason, you should probably be able to do what you want with it. But what is it about backyard chickens that appeals to you?
Absolutely. Well, now with that information, too, about the personal support pigs, I'm going to have to look into that because that is a new one for me. So I've been looking into the backyard chickens for quite some time. And, you know, with the surrounding areas having backyard chickens, I just think, why not Cambridge? And so here we are now.
How much response have you received so far with your petition?
The response has been fantastic. The support from the community, I was quite overwhelmed with the first few days. We're up to about 354 signatures on change.org. And on our Facebook group, specifically, we have 132 members, which I think is pretty strong numbers. We're just coming up on our first week. And the support has been wonderful. People have been providing their own information, different strategies from the previous petition that took place as well. They set some fantastic groundwork for the cause, and lots of people spreading the word. So the response, I'm overwhelmed with joy with how it started off.
I think it's a very fair point to make that neighboring municipalities like Kitchener and Waterloo allow for backyard chickens. So why not Cambridge? Would you intend, I assume, Madison, of having them yourself?
Absolutely. In the past, when I have lived outside of the area, I did have quite a few chickens, and they were such a fun thing to have at home. I'm a big egg person. We go through tons of eggs at home, and just being able to kind of wake up in the morning on a nice summer day and have your coffee, go out and check on the girls, and, come in and make your omelet and have family members pop over. It just sets such a nice mood. So I'm looking forward to hopefully having that again in the city.
Were there any problems with those chickens that you've had on your property in the past, perhaps insofar as attracting other animals that may be predators to the chickens?
Personally, I didn't have that issue at all. On the Facebook page, I have, made a couple of different surveys asking people their opinions, whether they support the cause or not, what are their concerns. And the biggest one that's been coming up is the predators. And I find that interesting. Definitely want to hear more about it. But in my experience, I haven't had that. And I'd love to hear from other people that have chickens in Kitchener-Waterloo area if they've been experiencing that, because we can learn from those people that already have them nearby.
Do they smell at all or create a lot of commotion, make a lot of noise?
I am a big nature person, so to me, when I wake up in the morning and hear the birds chirping outside, it's just beautiful to me. And I think that's kind of similar to the sounds that you would hear from chickens. If you have some roosters, and that's a different story perhaps, but for chickens, I don't find them to be too loud or a pest in that regard.
Several hundred signatures on the online petition so far, more than 100 people on the Facebook group. That's pretty good for about a week's time here, Madison. Have you heard anything from the city to this point?
I haven't heard anything from the city. I am kind of collecting some data and information. I really wanted to see what other people in the community thought. A few years have passed since the last petition was brought up, and I understand that maybe it was reviewed a couple of years ago, but I think with the support and interest for a lot of people, and the cost of living and groceries and things like that, there's a lot more to it. There's so many dynamics that kind of come into the play of chickens, whether, people are excited for eggs, hobby, learning to reduce, factory farms, de-stressing. There's a lifestyle with backyard chickens, and I really just wanted to hear from the people first before kind of connecting with council. So that will be one of the next steps going forward.
So at some point you do intend on appearing at council and making your case for backyard chickens?
Yeah, that's definitely the goal.
Madison, really appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Madison Turner created the petition. It's now more than several hundred signatures. It's moving quickly because when I first checked in on this late last week, it was only in like the dozens or so, if even that many. So a lot of people signing on, a Facebook group that's gaining traction. That's one thing, obviously. Actually bringing this to fruition and creating the legislative change in Cambridge is quite another. However, I find myself in a bit of an awkward spot on this because, as I said at the outset, I do believe that it is your property, and for all intents and purposes, you pays your taxes on that property. You should be able to do pretty much what you want. And I've said that before when it comes to backyard fires, as an example, allowed in Kitchener, not allowed in Waterloo. I think they should be allowed, recognizing that, yes, it can have an impact on neighbors who don't like the smell of smoke or who have breathing problems, all those different things. But I love a good backyard fire. I don't love at all the idea of backyard chickens. And I do have a little bit of experience with them that I can share from a previous Farwell for Hire campaign. But I mean, do I really have that leg to stand on? And can you say smelly and noisy? Well, have you ever heard a dog bark in a backyard? And I love my dogs. So ours are fortunately not much of, they haven't been the barky types, but that can be frustrating and annoying to neighbors. So, I mean, do I really have a leg to stand on here? I think you do you in your backyard, and maybe the cities should make way for it, even though I don't particularly want them. I know I don't want them in my yard, and I don't think I'd love living next door to them, but it's your yard. Anyway, love to get your thoughts on these things. That's why we have the conversations on the show. Is it time for Cambridge to catch up to Waterloo and Kitchener and allow those backyard chickens? You tell me on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
A few years have passed since the last petition was brought up, and I understand that maybe it was reviewed a couple of years ago, but I think with the support and interest for a lot of people and the cost of living and groceries and things like that, I really just wanted to hear from the people first before kind of connecting with council. So that will be one of the next steps going forward.
Madison Turner is the person who has hatched the latest petition attempting to get the city of Cambridge to change course on backyard chickens. Cambridge, the outlier. Kitchener first, Waterloo followed. I remember talking to a former Waterloo councillor who, in her time as a councillor in Waterloo, voted against allowing backyard chickens and said, in retrospect, it was one of the most passionate issues that the council had discussed during its term. Waterloo has since come around on that and does allow for up to 4 backyard chickens, as does Kitchener, but Cambridge still no. What do you think of the idea? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So I don't live in either Cambridge or Kitchener, as you know, and I did keep in mind I grew up on a farm, so I know all about farm animals and smells and different things like that. However, my son and daughter-in-law purchased a home in a community that did allow backyard chickens, and the property did have backyard chickens that the people took with them when they left. It took them almost 2 years to get rid of the rats that accompanied the chickens because they were in warrens underneath the chicken coop, and they were in a small garage that was on the property as well. So my concern would be, yeah, great idea, have fresh eggs, but you really need to be on cleanup and vigilant about what comes onto your property. I'm not. I know there's rats in the city, and there's all kinds of things that will attract them, but definitely chickens are one of the things that attracts rats. So I would say I would be voting against it if it were in my community.
Lisa, appreciate the call and the perspective. I remember your roots as a farm girl, and I hear you when it comes to the vermin that the chickens can attract. But to your point, we're seeing more and more critters and creatures in our urban areas, aren't we? And I think that's because our urban areas are moving more and more into the places where the creatures and critters used to live. I know we've got a family living under our shed, and there's bunnies back there somewhere, and something. We were sitting out back the other afternoon, and my beloved said, "Do you hear that? That's whatever is living under the deck right now." It was some kind of sound coming from under there. I have no idea what it was. But they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Paul, good morning.
Morning. When my son and his family moved up to Rice Lake, one of the first things that I had to build up there was a chicken coop, and they have had chickens ever since. Never any problems with. Now they're out in the country, but there's no problems with rodents aside from the mice that you're going to get no matter where you are. The coyotes, they don't come around. It's in an enclosed. The coop is all closed up at night and whatnot, and they are just loving it. As a matter of fact, they had 5, and I think they just got 6 or 7 more a few weeks back.
So what do they love about it? Like the eggs that come?
The fresh eggs,
right, yep.
And the personality of the chickens, because the chickens, like they free range during the day and whatnot, and they follow you around, and if you're doing any work in the ground, like say you get a shovel, you shovel into the ground, and the chickens are right there to see what you're going to turn over. But they do have a personality, and they enjoy them. Okay. Now, as far as having them here in Cambridge, we can get a petition going, and we can have it brought up before City Council again and whatnot. But we've already established here in Cambridge that all it takes is 71 complaints, and something that was or is perfectly legal becomes illegal.
So we can eventually ban chickens, is what you're saying, just like they've banned fireworks, or they might ban fireworks.
Yeah. All it took was 71 complaints.
They haven't banned them yet, Paul. They're gonna bring it back for a discussion.
They're working on it.
I know.
But the point is, there are people that are going to be responsible with their chickens. They're going to clean up after them and whatnot. They're going to, make sure everything's clean and sanitary and whatnot. And then there's going to be the one person who's going to have chickens and they're not going to clean it up and they're going to have a rooster in there. And one person is going to spoil it for everyone. That's why we can't have nice things in Cambridge.
All right, Paul. And nice things in Cambridge might just be backyard chickens. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. Several years ago during the Farwell for Hire campaign, I remember it was the May long weekend, and a couple or a family in the Dune area of Kitchener were going away for the long weekend, had me, as part of my Farwell for Hire duties, tend to their backyard chickens. So I had some firsthand experience with it. Again, awfully close to the neighbor's house. I didn't particularly love the aroma, but there were fresh eggs every single day. They told me I could help myself to them if I so chose, as part of my pay for taking care of the chickens while they were gone. I didn't take advantage of that opportunity, but nonetheless, a wee bit of experience with it. You do you if it's something that is appealing. Not everybody's a cat person or a dog person either, and we keep those animals around the house. I mentioned on the show near the beginning today an email I received from Janet, who shared via email to Mike at 570news.com the story of her speed camera ticket at a school in St. Clements. Janet was doing the egregious misdeed of driving 51 in a 40. 51 in a 40. And I reminded you then, and the region by extension, Janet is not the speeder you're looking for. By the way, keep in mind this speeding ticket from a speed camera at a school in St. Clements in July. And wouldn't you know, my dear friend Jules, who's one of the sweetest, kindest people you'll ever want to meet, like honest to goodness gracious, but the speed camera does not discriminate, right? And Jules got a ticket as well on Weber Street in front of Sunnyside School the other day. 50 in a 40. 50 in a 40. Let me tell you something, region of Waterloo. Jules is also not the maniac on the road that you're looking for. Jules writes, if I knew that the money was going to a hospital, to a charity, to homeless initiatives in our community, I would pay double the fine. But this feels like a cash grab. It's the summer. Ain't nobody in the school right now. And yet, we're going to have a speed camera, and we are going to send tickets in the mail to people like Jules and Janet for doing the egregious driving behavior of 50 or 51 in a 40 zone. If you want to catch the maniacs, go where the maniacs are. Stop punishing these people for doing 50 on a residential street in July. Come on with your coming on. We gotta fix this, because everybody's getting paid on speed cameras. Everybody, from the region to the camera administrators to the ticket processors, everybody's getting paid. Tell me that's not a cash grab. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Do not adjust your calendars. This is the second Tuesday of the month. But last Tuesday was Canada Day. So some of the things we usually do on the first Tuesday of the month have been shifted to today, including, of course, 30 minutes from now, Ask the Chief with Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell and Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who heads the Traffic Services Unit. You can get your policing questions answered. Something else we do on the first Tuesday of every month is shine a brighter light on one of the tech companies in our community. It is our Tuesday Tech Spotlight, first Tuesday of every month at 10:30, but because of the holiday last week, here we are this morning, and we welcome to the program David Van Bruin, who is the co-founder and CEO at Ascension. David, did I say that part right, the name of the company?
You certainly did.
Oh, it's a good thing. It's a good day, David. Thanks for joining the show.
I've heard other pronunciations like Ascension, but I don't mind that one either.
Well, it's funny you say that because I double-checked. I thought there must be a typo because it looks exactly like Ascension minus the C. So here we are with Ascension.
It actually comes from a typo. Isaac Asimov, you might know iRobot and other...
Absolutely. Yeah.
So he used that term for all the robots that were in compliance with the 3 laws of robotics. And it was originally a typo of his name. So we have typo in our genes here.
I think that's great. So tell me a little bit more about how Ascension came to be.
So I was working with a different company that I was running as CEO, but I was started as a data scientist. And we did child safety scanning using what is a precursor to what everyone sees now as ChatGPT and similar. So we looked at a lot of children's data and used algorithms to identify risks. And it was wonderful to help a lot of children in tight positions, but also I saw where it had gone wrong quite a lot. So I sold the company and was looking at solving this next big problem, because if we use artificial intelligence everywhere in our lives, we have to be on top of it. We have to have oversight, governance, and ensure it's working for us. So I went to a pitch competition in Kitchener-Waterloo, and somehow a 1-minute pitch turned into the company, and largely through support of the ecosystem here.
So how do you ensure then, David, at Ascension, that our AI systems are being built equitably, fair, responsibly?
So it is a very difficult set of problems. So some of them are technical. We're able to use statistical measurements of outcomes for different people that are using the systems, whether it works for them. In some cases, it's whether they get a loan from a bank or whether their resume gets put on the top of the stack when an algorithm assesses it. So some of that is very technical, but straightforward for engineering. The part that's actually a lot more difficult is having people agree on what's important, what gets measured, how to assess it, and be able to put that to effective use within the large organization. And that's where we spent a lot of time developing together with the technology over the last 5 years. And we're at a point now where regulation is coming in across the globe and where companies are now being held to account in ways that they never were before. And ultimately, using software to automate a lot of the hard processes and having a central place where all the information is stored so that people can see evidence of the performance results, the scores, what's been done, and then generating reports that can be distributed to people is our approach to it.
Are there risks, David, that we should be aware of when it comes to the use of AI?
There are a tremendous number of risks. So I like to think of AI doing the kinds of jobs that humans have been doing all along, where we are very well aware of the risks. So in customer service, if your customer service agent says horrible things to customers, it's very obvious that that's a problem. And now that we're replacing this with AI agents, you just have to look at all the problems a human might have and see what happens if you scale that up with a AI bot. Now, if it's in healthcare, for example, lives are on the risk. Anything from a doctor taking notes, now using AI to take the notes, maybe gets things wrong that leads to improper diagnosis or medical attention not being given. And potentially people that come from minority groups don't have their language transcribed properly, or there can be loads of issues like that. When we're getting into personal use of artificial intelligence, some things to look out for: how much of the data that you're sharing do you really want to be owned by a few companies? Sometimes we share very, very sensitive data, for example. It hallucinates. Sometimes it's okay because you read it, but if you just use AI to write an email, you better look very carefully and look up the the sources on things, right? So many risks, large and small.
You mentioned earlier that 1 minute pitch that led to the founding of Ascension, and you made reference to the tech ecosystem here in the region of Waterloo. What is it about this place that helps builders like you? It's very similar to Silicon Valley, where they say, if you need something, throw a rock, you'll hit someone who can do it. So in that sense, it's very easy to find people that are on the same wavelength, even if you're not doing work together, just the community itself. But there's also a lot of community support, like Communitech in town, that when you're an early stage startup, you don't have a human resources department, right? You don't really know how to do corporate taxes, all of these things that you really do need people to come and help with. And we have abundance of support of that nature here. As somebody who probably worries about AI a little more than he should, I'm glad to know that there are people like you and companies like Ascension helping us build it responsibly and safely. Thanks very much for joining the show today, David. Thank you. David Van Bruin is the co-founder and CEO at Ascension, which helps developers and enterprise leaders stress test their AI systems for fairness, bias, and accountability, as well as prepare for those evolving regulations like the EU Act and Canada's forthcoming AI legislation. The whole idea here is to build trustworthy, auditable, and transparent systems from the get-go. Again, knowing as little as I know about artificial intelligence, I probably worry about it more than I should. Maybe a sci-fi movie or two too many for me, but goodness gracious, I don't even use chat. Well, I have. I wanted to just see what this chat GPT stuff is all about. Blows my mind. I like to keep things in control of my own self. Thank you very much. I'm not giving any more control to the machines. Anyway, good to have David Van Bruin of Ascension on our Tuesday Tech Spotlight this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Something we like to do on a regular basis on this show is check in with our friends at the Canadian Mental Health Association, Waterloo, Wellington. We do this on a monthly basis because it's important to normalize, and I think they are being normalized, which is good. So maybe we're just a part of that normalization of conversations around our mental health. And we are into the carefree days of summer, so maybe we don't think about it as much, but this is our monthly reminder that we should check in with ourselves and even at other times with experts in the field. Helen Fishburne is the CEO at the Canadian Mental Health Association of Waterloo, Wellington, and joins us for the conversation. Good morning, Helen.
Good morning, Mike. Hope you're staying cool.
I am. I'm really lucky that way, and believe you me, it's crossed my mind to live in a home that does have air conditioning, which not everybody can lay claim to, and I think which might make the start of this summer a difficult one for some.
Oh, absolutely. We actually see a bit of a spike in our call volumes to our Here 24/7 service when the humidity is really high and intense. And I think about folks as well, Mike, that just don't have the luxury, literally the luxury of air conditioning. There are physical challenges in terms of just people feeling dehydrated, exhausted. just their energy is really low. And then mental health challenges come with that, right? Just people really discouraged and wanting to isolate as well. So, we love summer, but it can bring its challenges when the heat is this intense with the humidity.
One of the other challenges, and I think it's okay to acknowledge this, it doesn't make you a bad person or a bad parent, but with school out comes the additional stress of having little ones running around the house, especially if it's not air conditioned.
Absolutely. And, we always look forward to summer with our families, right? And you're right. It's a time that there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of excitement. Kids are outside. They're playing. It's awesome. For the first couple of weeks, it's awesome. and then it could be challenging, right? Lots of kids want to be kept busy. They don't necessarily like to have unstructured time. Our kids these days especially, they're very, used to having activities and used to being very highly busy and structured. So sometimes the summer when it's unstructured, some families are struggling and can't send their kids to camp for financial reasons as well. So there's always factors that, are challenges for parents. And I will say I often think of parents at this time of year because as much as we love having our kids around, it can be exhausting. There's, it's a lot of extra things for parents to have to manage on top of the regular things that they do. So you're right. It's very important for parents just to say, gosh, I need some help, or to ask for grandparents or for neighbors or to coordinate with other parents, or just to do very simple things to keep your kids busy as well and keep them focused.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we, have an open conversation like this because we are into these lazy, hazy, carefree days of summer, but they do come with additional stresses that it's okay to admit to. And then maybe, Helen, you have some tips that we could put into practice to help us deal with additional stresses that come at this time of year.
Yeah, I think sometimes because the summer tends to be a bit unstructured, and again, we like that. That's a good thing in many ways, right? We can't live in a routine all the time, but we know with young families and with parents, and frankly, all of us, Mike, there's only so long that we can go in those unstructured moments. I think maintaining that routine is helpful, or it doesn't have to be quite as rigid as it might be during the school year. And, when we're on vacation, you might, not have those bedtimes as early or some of the things that you're regularly doing. We want to give a break from some of those regimented routines, but at the same time, try to keep a routine where, you're keeping regular wake-up times and bedtimes and meal times and things like that. Definitely staying connected to parents and to your neighborhood and to your community is really, really important because that sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming and isolating as well when you have so much on your plate. I always emphasize the importance of self-care, right? Just pick a couple of things that make you feel good. And for all of us, Mike, that's different, right? For me, I love to garden. I love to swim. I love to take long walks with my hubby. Those are things that help me. But what are 3 things that help you, right? Is that staying active? Is that doing some mindfulness work just to relax and calm your brain, or focusing on gratitude? We always pay attention to screen time in the summer as well, especially with young ones and with teenagers, right? Because they can just get in front of their screens all the time. So just monitoring that. And the other thing I always emphasize, Mike, how important it is maybe it is time, if you're really struggling, and we all know it's been a tough year, maybe it's just time to ask for some help. Go see your family doctor, find a good therapist, reach out to us at Here 24/7, because as you know, Mike, you never have to manage these kinds of difficult feelings or times where you're feeling overwhelmed on your own.
And I think we might, in some instances, Helen, feel overwhelmed in the summer because it is the summer. And I think that comes with a baked-in expectation that we're going to do something and it's going to be something pretty grand. And maybe if we look at social media, it has to be as grand or grander than what the neighbors are doing in the summer.
Yeah, there is always that on social media, especially, those expectations and perceptions. You see everybody posting trips of, pictures of their trips, and, it always looks amazing. You sometimes don't get those pictures of what those trips, camping trips, sometimes can really be like as well, right? So it's skewed for sure. But again, we know that people struggle right now with the costs of things, and with fear of tariffs, and unemployment, and just a lot of uncertainty, and people feeling unsettled in our community. So when that happens, you go back to basics, right? What brings you joy? And there's simple things: taking your kids to a park, inviting some friends over for a cool drink, or just an ice cream sitting on your front porch. Just enjoying very simple things like trying something new, go pick some strawberries and make some jam. If you've never made jam before, that might be a fun thing to try, right? Just basic things. We know there's a ton of free activities in our community that are posted, with the region of Waterloo, for example, and all of the municipalities where we live have postings of things that you can do, concerts or other activities that are free. So there's so many things, Mike, that you can do that are simple, that stay connected, that bring you joy, but also that don't break the bank.
It is great guidance, as always, Helen. Thanks so much for being here for us.
Great to talk to you, Mike, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
I will. You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Helen Fishburne is the CEO at the Canadian Mental Health Association of Waterloo Wellington. Just a good reminder that there is a lot of expectation built into the summer. Take it easy. Practice a little bit of mindfulness, and remember, not every excursion has to be an expensive one. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is not the first calendar Tuesday of the month of July, but it's the first working Tuesday of the month of July, because last Tuesday was Canada Day. So the first working Tuesday of every month at 11 a.m. We're joined by our policing leaders for your opportunity to have your policing questions answered. Ask the Chief begins on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Once a month for a full hour, our policing leaders join us in studio to give you the chance to have your policing questions answered. In this community, Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell is here, Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who heads the Traffic Services Unit. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Scott, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You gentlemen are going to be busy today. Our listeners have been engaged in this. They wanted to make sure that with the Canada Day holiday last week, we weren't going to miss out. Phone lines are already getting busy, and we will get to your questions because it's important that you get this opportunity for sure. Before we do that, though, there are a couple of meaty issues, if you will, that I wanted to talk to you about, Mark. One of them being another fireworks-related holiday, another presence by regional police, and you had to close down Victoria Park in Kitchener again. This, to me, is starting to feel a little bit like St. Paddy's Day in Waterloo, without the same crowd, but it's a trend that I don't think we're all that pleased with. Can you share with us from the policing perspective what this looks like in the community these days?
Yeah, you've captured it well. When we look back at Victoria Day 2024 and 2025 and now Canada Day 2 years in a row, there's been a small number of people that have been engaging in unlawful, disappointing, dangerous behavior when it comes to discharging fireworks within crowds, at each other, at police, and so on. So our response has been considerable. We have to create operational plans where we have, dozens of officers deployed throughout the downtown Kitchener area, specifically Victoria Park. And there's a lot of cost and work that goes into creating those plans. And I heard Mayor Verbanovic on your show and his comments as well, and I do agree. A small number of people spoiling things for tens of thousands of people when you count it all up. So we're disappointed with some of the behavior. We had a very firm and fair approach to enforcement. We laid a number of charges, criminal charges, Liquor License Act, Trespass to Property Act, and then working with the City of Kitchener, there was a requirement to shut down Victoria Park, and we don't want this trend to continue. So we're in this wicked problem type of situation where we want our community to celebrate and gather and to be jovial on these occasions, but we have to ensure that safety comes first when it comes to our role and what we can do to mitigate any of the risks.
So I assume then, Mark, your role as a police service is in collaboration with municipal bylaw, municipal councils, et cetera.
Absolutely. And we know that there's shifting ground and when it comes to availability and use of fireworks. And we know that people are pushing the limits on, I can hear them in my neighborhood, outside of assigned hours and so on. So we'll allow those leadership teams to make their best evaluations and decisions when it comes to firework availability, and we'll adapt and work with them on planning moving forward. But I think it's really important, that we want to play a proactive, positive role when it comes to these celebration efforts. We want to support as much as possible, but there's a small number of people that continue to raise alarm bells for us and others. Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to hear directly from you today, Mark, and give our listeners the opportunity as well, is about the new Public Safety Communications Center that will be built on the grounds of police headquarters on Maple Grove Road. I watched with great interest that council meeting last week when you presented this plan, answered some questions. And for those that weren't able to take it in, this is a $173 million project, so it's not small potatoes at all. Let's start with the building itself. And when we talk about something with that kind of a price tag, how are we ensuring that a communication center like this meets the needs of our growing community, so today and tomorrow?
Yeah, and so we have been working on this for several years, informed by local consultant reports and also scanning the globe for how do we best approach public safety communications for today and tomorrow. So our time horizon is decades out. We're trying to look at what does the future of this region look like, knowing that we're growing to 1 million plus in the decades to come, looking at technological innovation, our deployment capacity, and things like site security. So when you build something like this, you need to create multiple layers of redundancy, security for power, connectivity, disaster-proof standards. And then what we're trying to get ahead is the economic scale of all of it. Knowing that through procurement, through implementation of new and emerging technology, we're going to need to do business differently. And so the approach is a co-location model where we want to bring as many public safety partners under one roof. And through the efficiency of what we can do for licensing and implementation of technology, we believe that there is a path to a better way of serving. So let me give you some examples. So next generation 911 technology. In this community, as of the fall, we will have text to 911 capability. But by the end of this decade, it will be mandated across Canada to have photo and video to 911 capability. And that's going to change the face of how we deploy. We'll have streams of video feeds coming into 911. It will change the human and the innovation capacity at the source. And we'll need to have new ways of deploying. This site will also have something called a real-time operations center. So imagine streams of integrated camera technology, highway systems, downtown corridors, remotely piloted aerial systems, so drone technology that we'll be deploying with our public safety partners to allow us real-time intelligence as we respond, before we respond, making decisions in real time. And also at this site will be a major incident response center. So imagine a large-scale disaster of some kind. And you don't need to take your imagination too far. If you just follow the news, floods, fires, storms, windstorms, tornadoes, power outages, mass casualty incidents, crashes, mass violence incidents, cyber attacks. This will be the epicenter of emergency preparedness and response for the region. And so the cost is high, but we're actually trying to find the economic curve to just deploy in the best way possible.
So looking at this as the epicenter that I understand it to be, having read the report, watched you at council last week, and knowing that today our emergency service response centers are divided. Paramedics are in Cambridge, fire is operated out of Strasbourg Road in Kitchener, and police at Maple Grove. and we've learned in that meeting last week that the CAOs of area municipalities have sent a letter to you and the police service saying fire services are not interested in being a part of this communication center, which just to me, Mark, doesn't make a ton of sense. But from your perspective, as you move forward with this communication center, how does it work without fire services involved, if at all?
So whatever the case, we're going to continue to work together. This is an opportunity point, and our horizon on partnership, will be everlasting. So we'll always be offering to come together, to innovate, to grow, and to deploy together. When you look at the breakdown of annual calls to 911, about 73% are for police, 17% for paramedics, leaving 10% for fire. So we're moving ahead with the partnership approach that we have, right now. I applaud our paramedic chief, John Riches, who is working with us to try to bring the paramedic dispatch site under here. And when we look at things like the mass casualty recommendations, that calamity in Nova Scotia from several years ago, things like that are telling us, and the quote that we're using is like to ensure that planning, policies, training, and agencies to be involved in the critical incident response are seeking to foster a culture of interoperability among emergency responders. So we believe that working closer and better together with technology and with our operations is the way forward. There are public safety partners within this region and those on the outskirts that also want to work with us under this model as well. So all I can tell you is, Mike, I think this is a long story. I think there'll be opportunities along the way to continue to collaborate and work together. And at the end of the day, this is about serving the community in the best way possible. Cost efficiency, response to emergencies in the best way possible, and to save lives and to save seconds in our response will count. And so we are working, to the best of our ability to bring our partners together, and more to continue.
Interoperability is the way forward, as far as I'm concerned. I look forward to these continued conversations. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I know you want to have your policing questions answered. This is what it's all about. I had a couple, too, I wanted to get answered. We'll get to your calls right after this. Ask the Chief on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Once a month, our police leaders join us in studio to answer your questions. Ask the Chief with Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell. Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths is here. He heads the Traffic Services Unit. And your questions answered. Let's get right to the phone lines. They are already busy. Sean, you can start us off. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Quite recently, there was a young man who was acquitted of a shooting in Toronto because he said his neighborhood was like Iraq. And then there was an article in the Record earlier this year where the Waterloo Regional Police Service was quite concerned about the increase in gun violence in our region. And I'm sort of wondering what can be done could you see this sort of fear pervading our area, and what could the police service do to actually address this? Because I'm thinking a lot of this is actually coming in from outside, it's leaking from the larger centers like Toronto, maybe.
All right, Sean, appreciate that question. And Mark, I think Sean summed up the story reasonably well. It was just last Friday, a jury acquitted this man on a charge of second-degree murder. He was carrying a handgun and used it in self-defense, which was the defense that ultimately stood up for him.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And your concerns are ours. I mean, we've been frequently on this show talking about, some of our top areas of focus, and gun violence is one of them. So not only the shooting incidents that we've seen in our community, we've had an average of 21 shooting incidents in the past 3 years, and 5 of the homicides that occurred last year, 4 of them involved firearms. So we know that there's a lot of guns out there, and also we've talked about imitation firearms being used in commissions of offenses like robberies and so on. So we think of ourselves as part of the, this hub of policing, public safety activity within the greater Toronto area, Southern Ontario. And so you're not wrong to say that there's outside influences coming to our region and vice versa. We have members of our community going across Ontario to carry out some concerning, organized crime, violence, and so on. One of our top considerations is our approach to crime suppression. So we're really focusing on our known offenders, people who are carrying, using weapons. Those are who are on bail terms and conditions right now and enforcing. And we are making considerable efforts on keeping those people accountable. And if there's enforcement capabilities, we're acting upon them. This year, we've seen a significant drop in gun violence in our community, and we can't take credit for that. We look at longer trends that really matter. But I can tell you shootings, homicides, gun incidents overall are down this year, and we're going to continue to be focused on it because these are concerning incidents everywhere.
Yeah. Sean, thanks for the question. Certainly addresses something that I know is on the minds of many. Shelley, you're next on Ask the Chief. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chief Kroll.
Good morning, Shelley.
On the weekend, I was out of town on Saturday, and I returned home. I live in a triplex. I returned home to some messages from my neighbor who had found drug paraphernalia on our property. She had called the non-emergency number and was told to bag it up and get rid of it. So when I came home, I messaged her a little bit, and she sent me some pictures, and there was needles and whatnot involved. So I called non-emergency number and was told that someone would pick it up, and I had told them where I was going to keep it safely because there's a lot of children in my neighborhood. I told them where I would put it safely, and they said they were very busy but would come get it. A little while after that, I received a call back from I believe it was a staff sergeant, but I'm not sure the name, who said that you don't come and pick up drug paraphernalia off property. Anything on our property belongs to us. So I'm wondering, and I asked a few questions, and I said there's like identifying papers in amongst the needles and whatnot. And I said, do you not care to know like who it was or what was in it? And he said, no. He said that's just stuff you see on TV. Like I couldn't have been more. He couldn't have been more unhelpful, in my opinion. And I'm just wondering for the future, because I know you can't put needles in the garbage. And there was tin foil, there was a spoon, there was a little bottle of morphine. In the future, for anybody else listening, what do we do, or can the police help more?
All right, Shelley, it's a great question from a real-life example. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. And I had a heads up about the call yesterday because I think it called in as
Shelley
well. Shelley spoke to Constable Chris Iden, and we tried to work through the issues. And I apologize that you had an unfortunate encounter from your perspective, and it's something to work through. We work with public health on the whole drug issue when it comes to drug paraphernalia, needles, and associated things. And there are capacity limits for us to respond unless we're actively involved in a criminal investigation. There are limits to our response for disposal of things. And so this may be a case where, maybe we could have done better to respond, to meet the needs that Shelley's outlining, concerns about should have investigation transpired. When it comes to simple paraphernalia, we try and work with not only public health, but also the community support agencies supporting drug use. So Shelley, we're happy to reconnect with you, and I know the individuals involved in that initial call, and we want to make amends to that interaction with any concerns that you have. At the same time, please continue to call us. If you're asking for advice, please continue to call us, and if we're not the agency to respond and to best help, we'll help to provide another connecting point in our community. We don't want to see drug needles, disposal items within our neighborhoods anywhere. And so we want to make sure those are cleaned up, and then we'll respond in the best way we can moving forward.
So if they are found, then the person who finds them should make a call somewhere and not try to dispose of them themselves.
I think so. I think there's concerns about just the health implications if people aren't properly equipped to dispose of those things. There are practices that would keep people safe in the disposal of those things. You can see the sharp containers or those disposal mechanisms across the community. And if people aren't equipped or prepared to do that, even thinking about all along about waste collection, we don't want somebody along the line in the chain of waste collection to be at risk of so call again, Shelley, if you come across it, and we'll best respond how we can with our community partners as well.
Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell in studio with us, as is Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who heads the Traffic Services Unit. It's Ask the Chief on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is your monthly opportunity to have policing questions answered, and we've got open phone lines and 30 minutes left. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. More of your calls for Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell and Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who leads the Traffic Services Unit, on Ask the Chief. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell in studio with us, along with Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, heads up traffic services for Waterloo Regional Police. It is your chance to get your policing questions answered. Our phone line's open at 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's get to the phones. More of your questions. Paul, good morning.
Morning. A couple of weeks ago, shots fired into the front door of a house over in Galt. At that time, it was from the police. They believe it's a targeted shooting, no danger to the public. Last week, same house, suspicious fire. But once again, they say, targeted probably, so no danger to the public. But what about the neighbors on each side and down the street a little bit? We're having people pounding on their doors in the middle of the night looking for drugs because they got the wrong address. If they get the wrong address when they're looking to buy drugs, what about getting the wrong address when they're shooting in the front door or setting fire to the place? At what point do we say enough is enough? What is wrong with having castle law and having the right to defend yourself against an armed intruder or multiple unarmed intruders, people who are a threat to you? Why can we not have castle law and solve some of these problems ourselves?
All right, Paul, thanks for the question. I think that's 2 months in a row that castle law has come up, Chief.
Thanks, Paul. And we are concerned about the incident. And I just want to make it clear that when we try to articulate to the public that there's no ongoing public safety concerns, we're trying to say that, to our knowledge, it's a targeted incident involving people known to each other. So the shooting incident that occurred and then the suspicious fire at the exact same location. Your point is well taken. There is an impact to the immediate neighbors and the whole neighborhood and the city in which, it has occurred. So we don't take any of it lightly. I can tell you some of our ongoing investigative efforts, do continue. We're very focused on solving and stopping this type of violence in our community. It's unacceptable. It's our highest priority. When it comes to your overall concern about the right to defend oneself, that's a legislative issue that we don't immediately control. People have the right to defend themselves within their homes and anywhere. There are limitations, but I'm not going to get into the well-warranted debate about castle law, Paul, in this forum. But happy to engage with you or anybody to walk through and talk through what the right to defend oneself looks like. And we want to ensure that people are helping these types of situations, reporting suspicious activity and behavior in their neighborhoods. We don't want any of this to reach the point of vigilante justice, and we don't want anyone in harm's way without our assistance, because we can do better. Yep.
All right, Paul, thank you very much for that question. Let's go next to Ian. Good morning, Ian.
Hey, good morning, Mike. First, a comment. I think it's not necessarily similar, but when it comes to the St. Paddy's Day party on Ezra and Marshall, in regards to the fireworks and, our Canada Day, I really strongly feel that if we don't nip this in the butt, you're going to have another Marshall-Ezra Street fiasco where the lawlessness just gets out of hand. People just do whatever they want. That's sort of first comment. The second, as you know, I live on Joseph, which is a one-way with a bike lane and a very high median. At the end of Canada Day, I saw Gaukel Street, all the cars coming out and having to go towards Victoria Street completely backed up. My question is, what happens, because we've had such dry temperatures, when somebody decides to set a firework off, it goes towards someone's house that has, say, a dry bush or something. Next thing you know, you got the house on fire, or for that matter, any sort of emergency. How the heck is EMS and police going to get to any of our community with the one-way street, the ultra-high medium bike lane? It's the same on Cedar. The same complaint has been made, and I've actually seen ambulance trying to get to the market on a Saturday and have a complete fiasco this way. Is there anything that, the police and EMS people can do to kind of bring awareness to the city, because they're not listening to our community? But this is, to me, a very valid safety concern. And to your point about this, interesting with the home insurance from this morning, I feel like our home insurance, what are they going to do? Because,
all right.
You get what I'm saying, Mike.
I totally get it, Ian. Thank you, because I want to make sure we get to our other callers, and I'm not sure really who wants to tackle this one, but maybe just what one of the takeaways might be is the involvement of police as an emergency service when it comes to road redesign, et cetera, how you navigate these things.
Well, I'll address that, Mike, and thank you, Ian. It's something that we work in partnership with our municipalities and the townships. We are at the table with them for traffic management meetings. We're not necessarily at the table with them for like road design or determinations of road design. But we are periodically asked for our input on things. But I know that our city partners, I know our municipal partners take these factors into account, emergency response and the ability to respond, obviously with fire and ambulance, given their size of vehicles and our own vehicles. They should be taking that into account. And I know there's has to be some kind of assessment for that prior to those road changes going. But when we are, we're at the table with them. When we are asked, we do provide our best input to that, not only for road design, but for major events or special events that are going to be going on, such as parades and things like that. We offer our input in those situations, but we certainly, can address those if we're approached.
All right. Go ahead, Mark.
And I'll just add, just to the initial comments about Canada Day and so on, like, we had as large of an operational plan as we've ever had, the most officers deployed for that type of celebration. Multiple arrests were made for criminal offenses, trespass to property, arrests on warrants, liquor license act. So any illegal behavior of any kind was enforced, and we will continue to take that approach because our concerns are the callers, in terms of us setting the tone and the expectations for our community.
All right. Ian, thanks for raising that and sharing the concern from your neighborhood. Next to Keith. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I have a question I'd like to address to staff, if I could, regarding traffic. 3 days ago, I was I guess you could say, victim of a road rage incident on the Hespeler Road, where a young gentleman was so close to me in the back driving that my car avoidance alarms went off. I was making a left turn, so I couldn't move over to the right to let this guy through. At any rate, shaking fists and honking horns and so forth. So, at any rate, I pulled up at a light, and lo and behold, Albus Racing, he was right beside me. He rolled down his window, and he made threats to me and how he was going to follow me home and kill my family and so on and so on and so on. It was, I'm not afraid of these guys. I was on the job years ago. And but it's really disturbing to think that this goes on. Now, the story is I posted it on Facebook on the Cambridge site to see if anybody else had this type of experience. I also put the guy's car license plate on. I don't know if I should have or not, but at any rate, the responses I got from the community were, and still coming in. I know this guy. He did the same thing to me. I saw him here and there passing in the gravel and acting like a maniac. And so I went into the station in Cambridge. Very nice guy there. We chatted. I told him the whole story, gave him the usual information, DOB, and explained the situation. And he looked it up while I was there and said, yes, that's the correct car and so forth. But I'm wondering what happens after, like with so many people even identifying this car. What happens after? Like, does patrol go around or does traffic go around? Do they just say you're a bad boy? Or I'd be willing to support charges. I'd testify, no problem.
All right, Keith, thanks very much for that. And Staff Sergeant Griffiths.
Yeah, Keith, thanks for your call. And that's certainly, the behavior there is absolutely unacceptable. It's criminal. And there should be investigation on given the information that you have and your willingness to be a witness. With the other incidents, it's very dependent upon the ability for us to be able to investigate, to link that to a driver, to be able to identify an offender that we can charge. But certainly, the pattern of behavior seems to be obviously very obvious to the community, and it may as well be to us. We always encourage people in these situations at the time. If that's a situation, call 911 and get us on the phone. Give us that information that you had, the driver's license information, the description of the driver, if you have one. Obviously, you were able to close enough to make kind of personal eye contact with that person. And those are investigations that should be followed up, whether it's through our traffic services branch or through our neighborhood policing branch. We will follow those up and investigate. And where there is evidence to lay a charge, we certainly will do so. And that behavior, unfortunately, is sadly common or more common on our roadways. But it doesn't mean that we have to just accept it and shrug our shoulders. There is investigation to be done there, and we will take it forward with enough information.
All right, Keith, thanks again for that question. Scott Griffiths, Staff Sergeant with the answer. Police Chief Mark Crowell in studio with us as well. Ask the Chief, your policing questions answered. We continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. In studio with Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell, Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths. He heads up the Traffic Services Unit. It is Ask the Chief, where you get your policing questions answered right back to the phones. Lisa, good morning.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Good.
Good. So I have a quick question, and then I have a comment if you have time for it. My question is, the intersection at Punky Doodle's Corners, is Waterloo Region connected to that, where they changed the access points and tried to make it safer? I know it was a sort of a area where there's a couple different counties that are part of it. Was Waterloo Region part of that collaboration?
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. It's Staff Griffiths. Yes, we are. We intersect with, I believe it's Oxford County and Perth County in that it's kind of a nexus of all three of those.
Okay, and I'm not sure if you're looking for feedback on what's been done there, but I came through that intersection with my grandson last week, coming up to the T intersection to turn left towards Tavistock, and there's a right turn to go up to the expressway there, and I swear there was at least 25 cars that did not stop to turn right. And I'm trying to teach my 12-year-old grandson about, he's getting to that point where a few years from now he's going to be driving. I said, all of those people should have been stopping, and he says, I know that. And I said, yeah, they know it too, and they're not stopping. So I'm not sure if there's consideration to potentially, I know that would be a terrible intersection to have lights, but I'm not sure that it's any safer now than it was before when I see something like that. So I just want to put my 2 cents on that. And the other thing I wanted to say is I grew up with someone whose father was on Waterloo Region, and to my knowledge, her brother still is. You guys do a heck of a job. I know you're all still human, and you do a job that I would not want to do. I know it's high stress, especially in a situation where you don't know what you're getting into when you go to a call. I just want to say thank you for what you do, and you handled your criticism very well today, but I think everyone still needs to remember that you guys are all human, and you do the best you can with what you have. Anyway, have a great day, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That's much appreciated. And I know I speak for the chief when I say that it's the community support that really powers us on a daily basis. It certainly gives us, as members of the community ourselves, a desire to keep pressing on for the betterment of the region. And I'll certainly take back that enforcement opportunity back to my team, and I'll share that with our rural policing unit as well. That I know they're very active out in the townships, so we'll work in collaboration with them to sort of see if we can address that. It
is nice to hear because it's far easier to criticize than praise, so thanks for that, Lisa. On those right-hand turns that Lisa was talking about, I think we alluded to this last month, or recently anyway, Scott, when we were on the show together. That to me comes down to the right on red thing. Like we just intuitively as drivers, we start thinking that when we're making a right-hand turn, stopping is kind of optional.
Yeah, unfortunately, and it's not.
Right.
It really isn't. If it's a red light or a stop sign, there is a responsibility to come to a complete stop before proceeding. There are charges related to those movements, and certainly a very enforceable activity. So to be very, very careful, asking, and I've, guilty of it myself, to come up to a side, and then there's ones where there's no right turns on reds, which are even more complicated, right? But you have to be conscious of the signage, be conscious of the lights, be conscious of the traffic around you, and just sliding through something is not optional.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for flagging that, Lisa. Let's go next to Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mike. This is also for the traffic cop. I say that with respect. I do drive for a living for the world's biggest courier company. So we've kind of all had that on-road training for driving rules and regulations. My question to him is there a tie-in with regional police and traffic training schools, MTO licensing, to teach people just to look at their dashboards? If the little blue light is on, that means you're driving with your high beams. And it's in the middle of the daytime. Come on, guys. You need to look down, and one, you need to see how fast you're going, and two, if there's a light on your dash, you need to know what it means.
All right, Joe. Appreciate that. Any collaboration between police and driving schools?
We don't do that, but we do, obviously, through our corporate comms, we do educational information out to the public via social media and other means like this, in order to raise awareness for people to obviously be conscious of certain things that may or that may not, that as we talk about a driver, there's more than once you leave school, there's then, the reality of life, and you have to be able to be conscious of these things. So certainly we encourage people to be aware of what's going on with their vehicle. There's a lot of things when you're driving a vehicle, there's a lot of responsibilities. And I've told my kids that, and I'm sure everyone does out there, is, just like Lisa teaching her 12-year-old, is that you have to have your head on a swivel. You really have to be willing to see what's around you and also know what's going on within your vehicle, right? So those high beams can blind vehicles oncoming. They can cause hazards, or even to make sure, as we've talked in the past, driving down the highway in the middle of the night with no lights on, because our driving lights are on. We haven't, automatic lights are a thing now, and it's like people just assume that they're just going to turn on when you get in the car, and sometimes they don't. But Joe, it's a very good sentiment, but we'll continue our education efforts and do what we can to help with those issues.
Chief?
Just very briefly, thanks, Joe. This is something we can bring to our, as Scott mentioned, our corporate communications team for that online education, but also to our youth engagement strategy. We can always forge new partnerships with driving schools and so on, and maybe to highlight, to those educational opportunities, the top offenses, the top concerns, and we want to forge those good behaviors young in life, and because, as we age, they become solidified. So good call, Joe. Thanks.
Youth engagement strategy. There's something else that we can get behind and maybe have further discussions on in the months ahead, because I'm sure that ties into Victoria Park, violence, gun violence, etc. So lots of opportunity here. But today, we're fresh out of time already. It goes by quickly. Gentlemen, thank you, as always, for making yourself available to our community through this show.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, he's the traffic cop, and Chief Mark Crowell with Waterloo Regional Police. It's Ask the Chief on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. As I look ahead at the calendar, the first Tuesday of August should put us back on a regular schedule with Regional Police for our monthly Ask the Chief segment. I know, though, that you were dialed into this one because you were asking even before last week's Canada Day holiday what would be happening to Ask the Chief this month. We just shifted it by a week, and as always, you had plenty of excellent questions. That's why we do the segment, that we give you the opportunity to have the ear of our policing leaders so you can have the questions answered about things that are concerning you in our community. So Tuesday, August the 5th, will be our next opportunity with Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell and Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths on our Ask the Chief segment. Something we get to do on a daily basis. You are given the opportunity to share with us your concerns from the neighborhood or some reflections on an issue that we have discussed on the show, or maybe we haven't yet discussed it and you're wondering, what the heck, Farwell? Why aren't you talking about this? Well, you can talk about it in our next hour because Talkback begins on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
The Talkback Hour is your daily opportunity to have your say. We open the phone lines so that we can hear directly from you. Maybe it's a reflection on an issue we talked about on the show today. We got a great deal of traction around insurance rates, the increases to home insurance primarily, and the organization which is known as Investors for Paris Compliance, which have issued an open letter and appeal to the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, asking that authority, which regulates the insurance industry, to take a look at home ownership or home insurance specifically. Why is it up 84% over the past decade? Are these rates sustainable for consumers? And is there a little bit of double dipping going on here, where on the one hand, the companies collect greater premiums from consumers, and on the other hand, they invest in the fossil fuel industry, says Investors for Paris Compliance, which of course contributes to climate change, which of course accelerates the dangers of natural disasters like fires and floods, etc. So there is that aspect of things, and we had as I mentioned, a pretty good conversation around that earlier today. One of the other stories that we learned about through All News Mornings today with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas is the order from Prime Minister Mark Carney that Cabinet's going to have to find a way to slash budgets by tens of billions of dollars over the next 3 years. If you look at and this is from reporting in today's Globe and Mail, if you look at just the next fiscal year, which is the 2026-27, beginning next April, so we're down to about 9 months from now, it's going to have to be a 7.5% budget reduction. The following year, 10%, and the year after that, 15% by way of reduction. And I, for one, as I said earlier today, am here for any conversations around how those departments can reduce their budgets. I think an accounting and auditing like this is long overdue, particularly when you consider the incredible increase, about 40% in the size of our federal civil servants and the associated costs that come with just paying all the people. And at the same time, we've been paying all these many more people. We've also been spending more on outside consultants. So that is quite the economic record from the previous Prime Minister's regime here in Canada. The new Prime Minister seems intent on some course correction in that regard. I am absolutely here for it. Or maybe it's something else entirely that's on your mind this Tuesday afternoon, that's what Talkback is for. Let's have the conversation. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Dallas, start us off. Good afternoon.
How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, thank you. And you?
Not so bad.
Good.
A couple of quick points before I get to the main one I want to talk about. As far as the chickens in the backyard, well, maybe we should all have some, and then we can sell all the eggs to Trump. Apparently they have a shortage of them. I don't know.
All right, there you go.
As far as I was listening to the conversations from the police services guys there, and, you know, policing is one thing, but I got to tell you, my experience when my wife passed and they came in the house and did everything they had to do, those folks are stand-up people, 100%. They were honest, helpful, and they were the most forgiving people at that point in time. And I wish I had gotten the officers' names that was here, because if I had them still today, I would definitely be giving them a kudos for what they did for me that day. The policing thing, well, you know, there's only so many of them for so many of us, and they can't always get to the call. But that day, they were here in seconds, and the EMS was here in seconds as well. And, well, that's my little give back for today.
All right, Dallas, appreciate you making the call and sharing that story. We had a similar call from Lisa during our last hour, where she also shared some praise with police while they were here. I hope they're still listening as they drive back to their next appointment, as they serve our community as members of our Waterloo Regional Police Service. Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths and I were joking about the Midway that's out in the parking lot here that's been set up at the boardwalk. All kinds of amusement rides for the kids. And I was joking with Scott. He was joking that he was going to be going out on the tilt-a-whirl as soon as he had a chance today. I don't think he was really doing that. So here's to hoping that both Staff Griffiths and Chief Crowell are listening on their way to their next appointment, and they could hear your kind words as well, Dallas, because I know they go a long way. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show. You call, we'll answer, and you start the conversation. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And we'll get right back to the phones so we can do more talking back. Andre, good afternoon.
Good day, Mike. I wanted to talk about the what Mary's been talking a lot, and she is so right, because I've been going a lot out lately, and it's about bicycles, e-bikes on sidewalk. I said it one time, I got off the bus and I almost got hit. He was going so fast, but it's just, I don't see nobody on our bike lane on the streets, Mike. I see them all. My kids are telling me, actually, but they're on the sidewalk, and it's just so dangerous. And I was going to ask the officers, the chief and all that, Griffin, that how come we don't have patrol traffic on foot or on bike like we used to do, or on horse, for that kind of event, and not event, but traffic. And how come we don't have also technology to photo radar these bikes, like Mary said, have a license plate, just ticket them, because it's happening way too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, listen, Andre, I get you. And there are laws against bicycles of a certain size being on the sidewalk. And look, it's one of those things where there are so many demands for service. Police couldn't possibly be in every place at every moment. But I think with technology, we might be able to get somewhere in that regard. I think you might be onto something as far as that's concerned. It's funny you bring it up, though, because last evening, as my beloved and I were out for a walk with Rosie the pandemic pup, right around the same time that I told you the story when we started the show today, somebody just drove by and yelled, "Hey, Farwell!" out the window and gave a big wave. And I'm I love when that stuff happens. I think it's just great that we get along so well. I mean, if you need to offer some feedback, constructive criticism when you drive by, you're welcome to do that too. But especially when I'm with my beloved, you could be nicer. And this fellow loved it. Anyway, we saw a young adult. I would have placed the guy maybe in his 20s. Doesn't matter. Just not a kid, though. But on one of those electric scooters. And let me tell you, we both noticed the speed at which he was traveling. He was in the bike lane, I'll grant you. But this thing was flying, and he was not wearing a helmet. And just yesterday on the show, I told you the story about physicians in this country, primarily reporting from Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, but the number of injuries they're seeing of young people under the age of 14 being injured while riding these e-scooters because they don't follow the rules by putting on a helmet, and they're riding them too fast and too recklessly. Preventable injury. This guy, oh boy, he was cruising for a bruising, let me tell you. Not under the age of 14, but the same behavior. It's dangerous, so dangerous. All right, back to the phones. Sean, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, I was listening to the proposed cutbacks by Minister Mark Carney, and, you know, I'm sort of amused. We had an election between the Liberals, led by Mr. Mark Carney, and the Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre. What we've ended up with is an old-fashioned progressive conservative government, which is about halfway between the two. And I don't know whether that's neither here nor there, but it just sort of amuses me.
You know what, Sean? I find it equally interesting, if not amusing. And it's funny, when it comes to those cuts, Marino sends me an email to Mike at 570news.com and says, Kitchener will have all-day two-way GO service, and the new Highway 7 will be finished before Carney's cuts take effect. And that surprises me a little bit. I don't know why we doubt it. Maybe because it's something that we've heard before. I don't know. Have we heard it from somebody once they're in government as opposed to while they're campaigning? But I like the references to two things that are never going to happen. I'm sorry. I've given up on all-day two-way GO. I really have. And we all know there will never be, at least not in our lifetimes, a new Highway 7 between Kitchener and Guelph. But I have a little more faith than you, Marino. I hope my faith is not misplaced in these dramatic budget cuts of tens of billions of dollars happening in the next several years. Bring it on. I'll help you find some fat to trim. Walter, good afternoon. You're on Talkback.
Good afternoon, Mike. Mike, would you say that all the countries over in the Middle East are quite wealthy over there?
All of them? No, but many, yes.
Well, all the oil-producing ones.
Sure, okay, yes.
Yeah, like ridiculously wealthy. So I think that we should be getting these pipelines out of Alberta, out to the West Coast, and across Canada with natural gas and oil. And I know a lot of people might not agree with that, but that's going to create a lot of work and a lot of money. It might not be all we need, but it's going to create a big chunk of it. Maybe then they don't have to raise or I'm sorry, cut 7%. Maybe it'll only be 3% and so on. But also, I think they should do away with all lobby groups in Ottawa and in Toronto and wherever else. No more lobby groups anywhere. And all these consultants and all that. Look at, I'm sure that we could figure it out, without having to hire these guys. That's what these people are elected for. And, I don't know if that would solve the entire problem, but I think it would cut down on the impact it would have on, out of people's pockets. As far as insurance goes, it's a scam. It's a scam, Mike. And I don't even know why we need insurance. To be quite honest with you. I hit you with my car, you hit me with your car. I fix my car, you fix your car. Okay, fine.
Who's paying for my injuries?
You.
Oh, okay. We're all responsible.
And if you don't like it, then don't drive.
Okay. Okay. I only ask that because I'll never forget, because you can't forget something like this. Driving along the 401, this is back in the days where you could actually drive on the 401. It was later, like 9-ish on a Sunday night. So there was hardly any traffic, and I got rear-ended at speed. I didn't slow down. I got rear-ended at speed because the guy driving behind me was drunk. I was not seriously injured. I'm still here talking to you today, and there is no nagging injury from that. But had I been, how can that possibly be on me? Lost income, anything like that? I could not possibly be responsible for that just by taking the risk of driving, could I? Well, maybe Walter, maybe he's onto something that you can get behind. I don't think I can quite get behind that. But anyway, we'll continue the conversation here on Talkback. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We want to give you as much time as possible to talk back to us. So right back to the phones we go. Kyle is with us. Good afternoon, Kyle.
Hey, Farwell.
I love it. Was that you last night?
No.
It was so good. I loved it so much.
I know. I want to go back. So a caller, I think it was another actually, a delivery driver, was talking about how people drive with their high beams on during the day.
Yeah.
And I laughed because I'm on the road just like this other fella all day, every day. And I had a friend of mine come over on the weekend, and we took his car out, and I said to him, buddy, you need a wheel bearing. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, that's not my oil change. I was like, no, I understand you need an oil change, but your wheel bearing is going. And it goes back, and I'm thinking,
You knew that because you could hear it?
I could hear it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I called my buddy. He's a mechanic. He got it in right away, fixed it. I said, don't worry, I'll get this so that way you could drive safe home. I don't want anything happen to you. But I'm thinking, I understand there's a backlog of drivers, and I understand, we always learn about the rules of the road and what is the law. But I think that it wouldn't hurt to take it one step further and just teach people the basics. What's on your dashboard, how to change a tire, how do you know if your tire is low and needs air, how do you check the oil, just basic things like that, or even just wipers or just something, because there's more to driving, and this is just me being a stickler, but there's more to driving than just, putting on a signal, making your proper lane change, but it's also the safety of your vehicle being on the road, and I think we don't emphasize that enough. And you always hear the stories where the wheel came off on the 401, or you've got somebody that had an just something like that. I think we really need to take a look at that, and I think that would really even help out the way the roads are going on right now, Mike. But I know it's tough to do. I know, nothing's perfect, but that's just my 2 cents on it. So I really appreciate it. Thanks, man.
All right, Kyle, appreciate the call. I think you might have stumbled upon a possible business idea. Do some automobile maintenance 101. I know the University of Waterloo does an adulting 101 kind of crash course for its new students. And among the things you can learn about, along with navigating a grocery store and doing the laundry, is changing a tire. These things do happen. I think it's an excellent idea. And when you get started on that whole idea of the backlog at drive test centers, talk about the law of unintended consequences. I'll make a little note for myself, and we'll pick that up as we continue Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio. Oh, the law of unintended consequences. We'll get into that more in just a bit as we continue Talkback. Make your call, have your voice heard at 519-570-2545, star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. Preston Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Hey, I think we should start our own consultant company with our knowledge and our common sense. I think we do a great job consulting the government. We don't have to charge them half price, and we'd still make a lot of money.
I love it. Let's call it common sense consulting, Paul.
That is a great idea.
See, between the two of us, we're brilliant.
Yes, I think it's common sense, and that's where we lose it. Is we're bending for the few and not looking after the many.
Interesting way to put it.
And talking about the driving and that. Just, again, more common sense on the road. I heard somebody today that the lights were out and people were just obeying the four-way stop automatically. Like, that's what you learn 101 when you drive, right?
No question about it.
So I got so much to rant today. I'll tell you. You have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, buddy. Good to hear from you. Preston Paul, one of our newer listeners, and we're so glad to have him on board. I'm pretty sure it was Paul that put us up, Preston Paul, to 45 listeners now. I mean, one of these days I'm going to make it to 50. And let me tell you, I'm going to go home and tell my beloved to bake me a cake. We get to 50 listeners on this show. That point, though, about driving behaviors again, and I will come back to the law of unintended consequences, but when Preston Paul talked about four-way stopping in general, this came up during Ask the Chief today with Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths, who heads our traffic services unit with Waterloo Regional Police, when Lisa called and talked about an intersection where drivers going to the right weren't stopping at all. And I'm positive that this comes from our allowance for right turns on red lights. And I think I'd be okay with banning that practice and making it like Quebec, where you don't make a right-hand turn. You cannot legally make a right-hand turn against a red. But more than anything, this had come up before with Staff Griffiths. And we talked about stop signs kind of in general being stoptional. We treat them that way. And I'll be the first to admit, like, not full on barreling through, but I pretty much have been a rolling stop kind of guy. And since we had the conversation a couple of months ago on the show, I have made a point of full stops at the white line at every stop sign. Just because it's just, honestly, I believe this. It makes me a more attentive and better driver because I'm paying attention to all of the little things. Not just, oh yeah, there's the stop sign, but I know it's not a busy street, so I'm just going to slow down and turn right or whatever I'm doing. I make sure it's a full stop now. And then look, make sure, because it's going to serve you well when you get into a roundabout or you get somewhere else. And yeah, I've had the occasional impatient driver behind me, but I'm hoping that the behavior that I'm modeling is something they decide to follow. You see what I'm doing here? It's all a method to my madness. Greg, good afternoon. You're on Talkback.
Hey, Mike. Just given the top of the year just talking about, I'll just add a comment. Again, common sense would maybe help because just like size up the whole picture. Like if it's all of a sudden like barren wasteland on every time and you can see that, okay, no one's around, fine, a bit of rolling stop. If there's anything visually impairing it, like especially now.
No, Greg, I'm not going to allow it. No, I'm stopping you right there because this is the thing. If you actually force yourself to follow the letter of the law, you're going to do a better job the next time. And when it's a busier intersection.
Okay, right. But I'm just saying common sense is lacking. That could also help. That's what I was basically getting at. Yes, there's the letter of the law and all that. But anyways, that's not why I was even phoning.
Well, I'm not allowing it, though.
Okay.
All
right. Good. Don't put me in jail.
I'm a stickler. Yeah, you be careful. You're on the cusp of jackwagon jail.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
But, I didn't get out in time to call in to ask my questions to the police, but if I was trying to get it in, I had a better one than I had yesterday. You know, stunt driving, when they get them at whatever, 180, 200. Is there anywhere in this country that is a limit or an allowable thing?
The Autobahn, baby. Get yourself onto the Autobahn.
But in our country.
Oh, yeah, our country, you said. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, well, that's the thing, because I drove a bigger truck for a number of years, and they had what's called governors. Can't go over 110. And, and then it's a sign on the back, so you'll know that truck is, that's their capabilities. And I'm thinking that, if there's nowhere, like, why don't they make it a law to say, no car can legally land on a Canadian road unless you have a governor capping it at, say, 140 or something reasonable for when you have to, maybe step on it a bit. But, like, the 212s that get caught in a 100 zone, like, why do they even exist?
Yeah, you know what, Greg? It's a great question and one that's been asked before. If we don't want people driving so ding-dang fast, why do we make vehicles that allow them to drive so ding-dang fast? I've wondered that myself, and I say that as somebody who enjoys things that go fast. But there's a time and there's a place, and that time and place is on a racetrack somewhere. But it's a really good question. I just don't know. I don't know what that looks like, to be honest with you, but I'm not opposed to the idea out of hand. And that question that Greg had yesterday, if you missed it, he was curious about making a left-hand turn if there is somebody crossing the street, but that somebody crossing the street at the crosswalk is doing so when the orange hand is flashing or the countdown is on, And it was Greg's understanding that the pedestrian in that case in the crosswalk would be doing the illegal activity, crossing when the hand was flashing or the countdown was already on. I don't believe that to be the case, but we didn't get to that question with police today. Maybe we can save it for next month when Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths is in again for our Ask the Chief segment. First Tuesday of every month between 11 and noon. Talkback is every day from noon to 1, and we continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. And right back to the phones on Talkback to say good afternoon to Tony. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Mike. How are you, buddy?
Good, thanks. How are you, my man?
I'm good. Thank you. I think I might have an answer to that question on why they make cars to go as fast as they do.
Okay.
When I worked in the auto industry many moons ago, I asked a GM executive that very question. And you know what his response to me was? He said to me, he goes, would you buy a Corvette that could only go 60 miles an hour?
I know. You see, that doesn't necessarily surprise me.
No, and I said, well, I mean, but they could govern the vehicles. And he goes, that's why we have radar, and that's why we have law enforcement. If you want to be a meatball and drive that fast, you run the risk of getting a very big ticket.
Fair enough.
So that's what he told me, and I thought, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. So just thought I'd pass that on.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it. Excellent use of meatball as well. And if you'll just forgive the very brief aside here. Look, I've told you this before. My very first car was a 1969 Ford Mustang. I bought it when I was a kid, restored it, loved it. I'm a Ford guy through and through. The Mustang will always be the car that holds my heart. But damn, if those Corvettes aren't nice looking cars, eh? Holy moly. It's a good looking vehicle. Okay, Mary, hello.
Hello, Mr. Mike with a mic.
Hello, Mary on a bike.
Yes. Only 2 more sleeps and I can hear Uga Chaka.
Yeah, Gary Chaka. Gary Chalk will be here Thursday morning. Yeah.
Well, I hope he's listening to know what a devoted fan I am.
You are both devout and devoted. I love it.
Oh, I love it too. Thank you. Now, that guy, he said about it, I wasn't going to bring this up, but the rolling stop.
Yeah.
That's not appropriate.
Yeah, you know what? We shouldn't even call it a rolling stop.
No.
We should just call it going through a stop sign.
Exactly.
Yep.
And on my bicycle, I've called into the Chiefs, and I have a full view of a street coming onto my street.
Yeah, you've told us about this before. People don't stop.
No, 99.9. Why? You know what, Mike? The police, if they sat there, could make as much money as the photo radar.
There you go.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done.
I was just agreeing with you, Mary.
Oh, okay. Oh, now I have to. Oh, I appreciated Kyle's call, and my daughter. Well, I think she's 55. Can't remember exactly, but she took the it was home economics or shop when you went to school. I don't know what it is now, but she took the course for looking after the car, changing the tire, checking the oil and all this stuff. And Kyle is so right. So many people.
Don't say that, Mary. It's going to go to his head when you say Kyle was so right.
It's okay. It's okay.
We can tease the regulars, Mary.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in my day, your day, and my daughter's day, when you turned 16 and you went for your test, you could immediately go on the road.
Yes, but I also took an 8-week or 10-week or something like that course with Young Drivers of Canada because allegedly that was going to lower my insurance premiums.
Yeah, but I did it at high school.
Okay.
But it does not matter.
All right.
But then she got a job in Kitchener at a restaurant, and if I had known this, she told me after, she got a flat tire coming home at, say, 1:30, maybe even 2, on the 7 and 8, and she got a flat tire, and she's there changing it, and I thought, oh, my God, Oh, my God.
At least she knew how to do it.
In those days, Mike, there was hardly any traffic.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary, I love you, but I got to get to some other callers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. I spoke in me and my slang, right? And Mary thought I was cutting her off earlier when I just said, there you go. Not that you were over. It was just my expression for agreeing with her. Anyway, as I said, we have to get to other callers. Terry has been waiting patiently. From Mary to Terry, all we need is a Larry and a Jerry and maybe a Gary. Hi, Terry.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Maybe a Perry, Carrie. Sorry, I got on a...
What about Barry?
Barry? Oh, where's Verbanovic when you need him, eh?
There you go. I think he spells his name with an E, doesn't he? Barry, like
he does.
Barry.
He does.
Yeah, thought so. About these rolling stops, Mike, I think they learn early because some years ago I was dating this lady, and her 16-year-old son was just learning how to drive. So I went out with him once, and he rolled through a stop sign, and I just basically quietly, very patiently said, you just ran a stop sign. You know what he said? Oh, that's a rolling stop. I go, well, you can call it what you want. If you do that during your road test, you're going to fail. But anyway, I think you got the message. But Mary yesterday called about the bicycle helmets.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's 8. If you're under 18, you have to wear one. But I don't know how you enforce that because people don't carry IDs with them. So how are you going to give someone a ticket for riding a bicycle without a helmet on?
Oh, for sure.
Like, say, 16 years old.
And I remember when...
It's a ridiculous law.
Yeah, when this all started, people of our age, Terry, were kind of grandfathered in. We never had to wear them because we didn't have to wear them like it wasn't a law when we were kids. It's all very strange. But anyway, you should wear one, though. It's your melon, for crying out loud. Protect that thing.
It makes me laugh. Well, when I go to the States on my motorbike, I never wear a helmet down there, whichever state permits you not to wear one.
Really?
I take it right off, Mike. I cross the border into Michigan. On my way over the bridge, it's already in my saddlebag.
Terry, anyway, you're going to scramble. You don't want...
I'm a rebel, Mike.
Oh, my gosh. I guess you...
I had one crash when I was 17 years old, and that was due to lack of experience. Since then, knock on wood, I've been,
knocking on wood for you.
My head's on a swivel all the time. But, about that law, I don't know. Because I bet you if I went out in the streets of Ontario riding my motorbike without a helmet, cops and airplanes would be landing to give me a ticket. Yet they let the kids ride without their bicycles without helmets. It's strange, but it is what it is, Mike. Have yourself a good day.
Thank you, Terry. A little different, too, because on our motorcycles, to Tony's point earlier, who would buy a Kawasaki Ninja if it was governed at 60 miles, 100 kilometers per hour? I say that as a Kawasaki Ninja rider. We go a little faster on our motorcycles, Terry, than the people on their bicycles go. Although, in colliding with a large 2,000, 3,000-pound vehicle, well, you're going to come out on the wrong end of that equation. Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The law of unintended consequences. See, I told you I would make a note so I wouldn't forget to come back to this. Kyle called earlier and mentioned the backlog at the MTO and how drive test centers don't seem to be doing a whole lot of testing these days. And if you wonder why our roads seem to be as menacing as they are, you think that might play a part. I really don't understand how we let standards like that slip so greatly. In order to move people through the drive test centers faster, it's a much easier road test than it used to be. And along those same lines of unintended consequences, speed cameras, the ones in Wellington County that have been generating millions of dollars in their first few months of operation. One in particular on Bellside Avenue in Fergus. You probably know it. If you head up Highway 6, you hang a right at the Shoppers there. You're on Bellside. You pass a school. You come up to the Fergus Sportsplex, Communityplex. That's where they had the Butter Tart Festival this past weekend. There's a speed camera, limit 40. It's been dinging people left, right, and center. So what has happened, unintended consequence, is drivers have now diverted themselves. They've changed their route to avoid the speed camera. And they're going through these residential neighborhoods where people living there are saying, quote, we need to make them slow down because it's ridiculous. I see people complaining about having to drive 40. Well, that's what it is here, too. They seem to think it's okay to go faster from stop sign to stop sign, so they're always speeding. I find it's almost like they're pissed off that they have to go around, so they're coming in, they're mad, and they're gunning it. Like, there's a stop sign there and a stop sign there, and they're accelerating the whole time. It's a little crazy. That's what residents of Fergus are encountering as drivers try to avoid the speed camera on Bellside Avenue. Unintended consequence. You know what else is an unintended consequence? The emails I received from Janet and Jules today. A couple of J's. Janet was doing 51 in a 40. Jules was doing 50 in a 40. School zone, summertime, speed camera, tickets. These are not the maniacs you're looking for. This is an unintended consequence. You're taking money from people who ought not have money taken from them. We need to fix this speed camera nonsense. I got to go. My name's Mike Farwell. Back tomorrow morning at 9. Bye for now.